back to Garden Studio. I'm Tessa Pinner, a designer and gardener in upstate South Carolina, Zone 8A. The topic of today's video is how to hide ugly things. And there are four main approaches that I have come up with. I'm sure some other people might have other things to add to this, but the four ways that I've come up with are: number one, plant something. This is fairly self-explanatory. If you are trying to screen a view, if you have an object that's really ugly, you can plant something in front of it. This could be a hedge, this could be a tree, depending on what the ugly thing is that you are trying to hide. It could be the view of your neighbors, anything like that. Number two, build something. The most obvious example in this category would be a fence. If you move into a house and you want to delete your neighbors instantly, you can put up a privacy fence. There's other things that you can build, but that is probably the most evident. Number three, a combination build and plant. So this would be something like a trellis panel that you'd build, but then you're going to climb a vine up it, and a combination of a built man-made thing and a plant that gives you that ability to hide something. And number four, paint it. So this might sound funny, but the muddier and more kind of sludgy the color is, the more your eye doesn't see it in the landscape. So we tend to think that, oh, if I want it to go away, I'll paint it black or I'll paint it green, which actually your eye will be drawn to a green or drawn to a black. You want the most nondescript. Is it brown? Is it gray? Is it green? A color that kind of melds all of those. And I'll show some examples in a paint deck in just a minute of what that could look like. And you can even get the paint out, the paint swatch out, and hold it up and go back and look and say, can I see it? Come along and I'll show you a couple of things that we're working on now, live projects, and a couple of examples of things that we've hidden, ways we've hidden ugly things on other parts of the garden. This condenser unit was installed about 2 weeks ago to allow a mini split to be put into our kitchen. The house is a bit older and the ductwork was not conducive to the flow that we really need in the house. And this was the best way to solve that problem. However, it created another problem for us, one of the aesthetic view from outside. Now the kitchen's cool, but we have to look at this ugly thing. So immediately it rose to the top of our garden priorities to figure out how to hide it. Sometimes the ugly thing you are trying to hide is outside your property, a view, the neighbors. We'll show you a doozy of an example in just a minute of something outside that we really want to hide. But this one was just right here in the middle of the garden, a view that's not good. We're trying to get rid of it. Sometimes it's worth going big on plant material if you just don't want to wait for something to grow. Most of the time I would say, sure, get it small, don't spend as much money, and it will establish and grow just as well over time. So patience is a virtue in the garden. But sometimes we just can't be patient if we have something really awful or very urgent. So this was my example of, let's just go big and hide it right now. Here are my boxwood friends. They will go down to about this level. So mine is about 1.5 feet once they're actually in the ground, but they were pretty close to cover the height of this condensing unit instantly, which is exactly what I wanted. Now they do have some work to do, sideways, growing together. That will happen over time, but visually, there's at least a baffle between you and the ugly thing, right? So what your eye sees first is this, and then it will register what's behind it, but you can kind of forget about what's back here just with having something to distract you. Distraction, never underestimate the power of distraction to help you. Oh, look over there. Ooh, look over there. And then you don't see the thing that you don't want someone to see. A note on boxwoods. They are susceptible to something called boxwood blight, which once a plant is infected, it cannot be cured. It can only be treated, and it will kill the plant if not treated. So there are many articles that you can read if this is of interest to you. But one thing, just a responsibility aspect, if you do plant boxwoods, you need to know what that is and look out for it, so that if you see any signs of your plant suffering from boxwood blight, you either remove or you treat them. So it's not lightly that I plant these. I know that going in, and I'm going to keep a close eye out. However, in southern gardens and in a very tailored setting, sometimes there is nothing else that will do exactly the same thing as a boxwood. Boxwood cloud, boxwood hedge, something like that can be indispensable as a design feature. And I really tried to come up with a different option here. I went to the nursery, I walked around, I racked my brain. I just couldn't come up with something that was going to be a better solution for me for right here. So I say all of that. The caveat on boxwoods is pretty big, but sometimes in a southern garden, you just need to have them. The boxwoods are planted, they are mulched and all watered in. And already it's such a relief to see that green screen in front of the condenser unit. We had one more idea after getting these in the ground, that we might do a 1-2 punch of plant and also build something. So we're thinking a little piece of fence, a half of a 6-foot panel, so 3 foot by maybe 3 foot, just on the side where the condenser is behind the boxwoods, to give one more layer so your eye doesn't immediately see the white. The white just shows through the gaps at this point in the little hedge. And I would paint it one of those muddy, sludgy colors. In just a minute, I'll show you on the paint decks just exactly what I mean by that kind of color. This is a Sherwin-Williams paint deck, and the brand doesn't so much matter, it's just what I have on hand. But you could go to the paint store and pick out individual chips. I show this simply to say that this is the family of color that I mean when I say somewhere between gray and green and brown. It's in this kind of nondescript, muddy, grayish color that is going to be something that recedes from your eye and you don't notice it. It looks natural. Even if you think, well, that's not the color of a forest. Well, kind of when you squint your eyes, it's the color of all of the wood in the forest. And this color feels really natural, and it's not something you are immediately going to notice. So what I am going to do is probably pick my favorite, maybe this anonymous, but I'll pick one of these, get a sample can, probably paint it on either right on the object in question or on a piece of plywood if you're trying to hide something bigger, and then hold it up to the spot and see, does this do what I want to do? Do I need to go lighter or darker? And color is very subjective and very place specific. So you might love something in the store, think it's going to be perfect, and it's going to feel very different outside than it does inside with sunlight versus shade. So I'd say it's worth experimenting, but getting your perfect grayish down pat would be a great tool to have if you have something you need to paint. There's a downspout under here, and hopefully if you came out here, that would not be the first thing you would notice. You probably wouldn't even register hopefully at all, that there was something under this creeping fig. Now, creeping fig, you can see mine has a little winter damage. We had temperatures in the teens for a few nights in a row in January, and it caused some dieback on the more tender tips of the vine. So depending on where you are in the country, what your growing zone is, creeping fig may or may not be an option for you, but I show it as an idea of if you can grow a vine, something that is clinging, and this is less, it's less damaging on masonry than something like English ivy. Actually, this whole area, and you could kind of see, this is a good example. You can see the leftovers of English ivy where the rootlets clung to the brick. This was a huge project a couple of years ago to take it all off of this corner. We loved the green, but it was damaging to the masonry. It was really hard to keep in check. It wanted to come into the windows, very Miss Havisham. So it had to go. We missed the green on the wall, and so we planted this fig ivy, creeping fig, instead. This method of disguise is exactly what we hope for the line set up front that we just showed you. We'll paint it, and then it will be covered over with creeping fig in no time. This vine here is Confederate Jasmine. It's another sun-loving evergreen vine. That's a great option if you have something tall or something large that you want to hide. In this case, I planted it because I wanted to hide the fence. And the bonus that I got is that it clambered up. I don't even have any structure holding it. It somehow held itself up and is covering up the downspout right here. It is vigorous. This is just one plant that's been here 4 or 5 years. And I do have to come in and give it a good prune once or twice a season because you can see what it does. It sends little tendrils out and gets very wild and woolly. And a little bit of that I like, but some of this I'll come in and clean up probably in another month or two to make it just a little bit more contained. But this will develop trunks on it like an inch wide over time. I've seen some very mature specimens that are basically holding themselves up within time. So this Confederate Jasmine is a great option if you have something large or tall that you want to make just go away. This is a great option for the third category, which was something built plus something planted. So if you have, actually, let's just go over here and look at an example. This is also Confederate Jasmine. This is a great example of a combination of a man-made built element and a vine. So this fence panel here is essentially just a trellis for the vine. It's acting as a transparent screen between the inner courtyard and the driveway. And this is exactly what I wanted for it. If you don't need something completely solid, potentially you just want a little bit of a barrier, growing a vine on a panel of some kind is a great option. This hedge here is Camellia sasanqua. I did touch on this in a video all about privacy hedges and screens, and that being mostly an exterior thing that you are trying to hide a bad view, neighbors, traffic. In this case, I think it's worth mentioning again because it's hiding an ugly thing. The whole reason we planted this is because we have trash cans, we have a couple of condensers behind us, and the view this way from our garden pavilion was of all of that utility area, which is, there wasn't an easier way. There would have been another option if we wanted to build enclosures around everything, and sometimes that is the best approach. You're working in a very condensed space and you don't have room to plant. Sometimes the best thing you can do is essentially build a box around the trash cans or build a box around the generator and the AC condenser. In this case, we had the space and the wherewithal to do a green screen, and that was my preference. So I planted these sasanquas. Very occasionally, you have the luxurious ability to make an ugly thing just go away altogether. Such was the case with an outbuilding that was here until a few days ago. When we first arrived on this property, we instantly christened this particular outbuilding the Terrible Shed. It was worthy of a child's nightmares. Our older son would continually ask how many spiders were in it and what the spiders were going to do when we took the shed away. I mean, you can just imagine, full of spiders and other scary things. And now that the shed is gone, it has instantly become very important to finish the line of privacy panels. This fence behind me is our most clear example of a built hide ugly things. We like to pretend that we're in the country and we're living out our agrarian dreams, but really we're right in the city. This is smack dab next to an 8-lane road. So the 8-lane road is just right out there through the hole. Now we can see it from inside our house. And one of the very next things, probably today or tomorrow, is putting up the last 2 fence panels. Now this is especially important if there is something really immediate, you need to hide it now. Sometimes building something is the very best way to go. If you have a very narrow space, sometimes you don't have room to plant. You can only build something. And in this case, long term, we plan to do both. I will come back in with plantings, but the view out that way is so egregious that deleting it with a privacy fence immediately is really our best way to go. Remember the 8 lanes of traffic just that way? Well, they have been deleted, at least visually for now. So this is our first line of defense, the line of defense, and it will age to match the others in time. We may, if it really bothers us, put an aging stain on it just to bring the color down. Actually, I think we will do that because it is pretty bright for the first several months until it gets that more nice gray color. But we'll come back in front here and do probably a staggered line of evergreen planting that just helps not only with seeing so much fence, because that's not the prettiest, but also with the sound. So one kind of additional topic when you're thinking about hiding ugly things, if it comes to a road or something traffic related that you're trying to hide, well, you might also be thinking about hiding it aurally as well. So a fence helps sending the sound up, but unless you have one of those massive highway fences that just is up about 20 feet, this isn't going to do it for really blocking 8 lanes of traffic. But the more vegetation we can get between that road and us, the more the sound will be blocked as well. So again, a multi-pronged approach to this issue. We're tackling it a little bit at a time, but at least we don't have a big gap in the fence that we can see cars through anymore. So to recap, 4 main methods of hiding ugly things with a bonus of just bulldozing it. But the more likely practical ways of hiding an ugly thing: number 1, plant something in front of it. Number 2, build something in front of it or around it. Number 3, combination build and plant. This would be like a trellis system or a screen that you would grow a vine on. And number 4, paint it a very unobtrusive, natural-ish looking color that will just make your eye skip right over it and not notice it at all. Hope this was helpful. Good luck hugging your good luck hiding your own ugly things, and have a great week in your garden.